This video is made possible by the lovely people over on my Patreon. If you're interested in supporting the channel or you want to get your hands on some awesome high quality STLs, then please visit patreon.com/Will at Heroic Studios.
You know what time it is?
It's Morpher time!
What's going on, boys and girls? I'm back with another video. This little doodad I have here is my very own power morpher that I 3D printed, I designed, I put together, and it works. It even has a no coin function. That's it. It's trying to detect the power coin. But as you can see, there is no power coin to be had. Ergo, that's why you get flashy random colors and then a bright white one, because it's trying to find the coin. I have been working on this for months. I started it back in May of this year, went to Taiwan for work, started it over there, came back, didn't like the design, took a break, came back, started prototyping that same design, hated it, and then I decided to watch Iron Man. Yes, that Iron Man. And it got me thinking, I need to finish this damn Morpher. So that's what I did. I actually redesigned this whole thing in a day and started working on the circuitry and getting the code together. And I can tell you the last few weeks have been exhausting. Not like the last week or so where I've been sleep deprived to get this thing done and out to you guys. But it was rewarding and I am happy with the way it came out. So if you're watching this video, you are trying to make your very own power morpher. So we are going to do that for you. However, the only way you can get these files, get the code, and have access to the entire instruction manual as well as the BOM, you will have to go and subscribe to my Patreon. Because this is something that my Patreon has asked me to do, and so I did it. Much to my detriment, because I am so tired. I need to sleep. But we're going to take you through everything, electronics, putting together, powering it up, soldering. It's going to be fun. So stick around and we'll get this going for you guys. Go.
Alright, so let's take a really quick look at our circuit here. Nothing too complicated, nothing over the top. Very easy to comprehend, and I'm going to explain it to you. So you have your LED ring, your limit switch, and your read switch, along with your battery and the entire brains of the operation, your Arduino Nano. Here are all the wire specifications and what pins they go into. So your LED ring, you're going to have your ground, your voltage, and your data. Your data is going into pin 6, while your voltage is going into the 5 volts. Your ground is going into the ground. Your limit switch is like this right here. You have 3 connections, and the orientation that I have the limit switch dressed right here needs to be the orientation that you use. Data is on the far left side with the ground in the middle. If you put the data on the other side, your LED ring is going to work in the opposite fashion. You do not want that. Your data for this is going to go into pin 3. Your read switch, super simple, has 2 sides to it. You can solder one side to your data that goes to pin 2, the other side is the ground. Now, you have 2 grounds on your Arduino Nano. One ground is already going to be occupied by the battery, so that leaves you with 3 other grounds that you need to find a space for. With that being said, we're actually going to end up combining all 3 grounds into one wire and using the one and only ground left on the Arduino Nano. Now for the battery, you could go ahead and solder those connections straight into your board, or you can go ahead and get a connector that you see here. That way, all you have to do is simply plug in your battery and unplug it if this battery becomes defective or fully depleted over time. This thing charges when it is plugged in, and the Arduino Nano is USB plugged in to your computer. So if it dies, just plug it in the USB and you should be good to go. So not a very complicated circuit. I'm going to go more in depth when we get to the soldering and the wiring later on in the video. So let's move on to the components and explaining what each of these things are going to do.
Alright, so now that we have our circuit built, we did a little pre-soldering. We are actually going to go through all the parts here that make up the morpher. I know it looks a little daunting. Don't worry about it. I'm going to go through what each part is and what it does and how you put it together. And right here, this is where we're actually going to put it all together. So, starting off, this part right here is your main Morpher body. This is where all the gears and gadgets are going to go on the inside, and this is where the Morpher shell and the coin housing fits on the outside. All right, this little hole is for wire management and all that fun stuff. So this is your main part. This is the part that you need to make sure that you print very well. If you decide to do it in resin, make sure that it is clean, that there's no surface tackiness, okay? I did this on my Anchormate M5 and it came out really smooth, so I have no really worries about how this is going to work. Right here, this is the Morpher backing. Now this is an old version. I've actually modified it to fit the battery and the board a little bit better. So I'm going to be using an old version of this because my printers are acting stupid and I got to look at what's going on. So this is that, and this is the backing to it. So this is the lid that covers it. Simple as that. You hold it down with a screw in there, you're good to go. This is our coin housing. This is what's going to hold the coin. Behind it, you're going to have your reed switch and you're going to have your LED ring sitting under these two forks, okay? Now the coin, of course, they both have magnets because the reed switch actually uses magnetism to activate. So when you put your coin in, it goes in one way, you should be good to go. All right, so all of the coins have these two magnets at the bottom of it, and this is your main part here.
Hey guys, different alternate reality wheel here. I have crossover dimensions to let your reality wheel know that this part is actually obsolete. So we have gone ahead and redesigned this coin housing part to work with a button. The reason is because that when a magnet is constantly exposed to a reed switch, the reed switch will begin to degrade over time, which will make your Morpher not function properly. So we've designed this new coin housing to work with a button, and it is available over on the shared drive over on Patreon. You don't need to modify any code. You just have to add a button in there. The wiring is the same, which we'll get into later, and everything else is just putting it together. So at the recording of this video, the part is available. So if you want to go ahead and make that modification, go for it. Okay, I'm going back to my reality. Bye.
These are your handles. They clasp together like that. And this is what's going to hold your button, which is this right here, and your handle control spring. This little thing is going to sit and clasp on this part of your Morpher body, which is going to hold your handle in place, all right? Both of these things sit in here with your clasp sitting right there and your button sitting right there, just like that. Then of course you're going to bring it together, screw it down, and you have yourself a handle. These are your Morpher backings. These parts are what's going to sit on the upside down on the front of your Morpher body, and these things are actually going to stick out in the back where your levers are going to connect. These are the parts that go up and down like that when the Morpher is supposed to open and when the Morpher is supposed to close. These are unique. You just print one of each. Open, close, open, close. Simple, okay? Morpher shells are here. These are the front parts of the Morpher. You put them on the back of your Morpher and you screw these bad boys down. And then of course, like I said, these pegs here actually go inside of the Morpher body. Really simple, really easy. Last but not least, probably the most important part of this entire design are your levers. These levers are what's going to allow your Morpher to open and close, all right? So these need to be printed with as much durability as possible. I use PLA here, and I'm going to show you why you don't want to use PLA for your Morpher. You want to use ABS or PETG with these parts, or if you have a very durable, tough resin, you want to use that as well. All right, so those are all the 3D printed parts. We're going to go into the electronic parts now. This is your limit switch. This is what's going to activate your Morpher sequences on your LED. This is the reed switch. This switch is actually going to be sitting on the back of your Morpher coin housing like that. That way when the coin is inserted, this activates the LEDs, tells it that it's on. And probably the most important part of the electronic is your LED ring. This thing actually sits behind the coin housing here. You insert it as such, that way you have the LEDs fitting in behind that, okay? You might want to use a couple of glue dots to kind of hold it in place, but you probably don't need it. The thing that we need is our Arduino Nano. This is the board that's going to be controlling everything. And last but not least, battery. You need a battery. This battery actually connects and it's actually rechargeable, and you do recharge it through the Arduino Nano. When you plug it in, you should get a green LED that comes on, which we do. Perfect. And that tells you that this thing is getting power. If this thing is not on, you don't see an LED, all you need to do is plug in a USB to a computer, let it charge, and you should be good. The only downside with this battery is that there's no indicator on when it's done charging. So maybe charge it for about an hour, hour and a half, you should be good to go. Hardware, you need hardware. You need a lot of hardware. These are all the springs and screws and washers that I use. So instead of going through what each of them is, go ahead and just get these assortment kits. Now this screw assortment kits are on Amazon, very, very cheap. I think this is about $15 and you get a ton of assortment screws as well as the assortment springs. So go ahead and get this, again, be linked in the description down below. One more thing too, and it's completely optional. I actually have to find it. Give me a second. Here they are. Glue dots. Glue dots are basically a less messier way to kind of glue things together. You can't see it, but there's like a dot of sticky glue here. This is what I'm going to be using to kind of stick like the reed switch on the back of the Morpher housing and stuff like that. Get yourself some glue dots. They are super effective and very easy to clean up. So this is a very quick, niche way of getting things to stick together. Okay, we have all of our parts. Let's start putting it together. Okay, first we're going to start off with our handle. Our handle is very easy to put together. We're going to go ahead, we're going to twist it in until you hear a click, and it should stay in there just like that. Now for the trigger arm, you're going to be using this spring here. It's a bit more of a tougher spring. Alright, so we're just going to set this on here like that, spring in the lower position, and we're going to put our hand trigger thingy right there. That's supposed to sit behind the arm. Put everything together, make sure everything fits right, and you should get some bounce from that part. Turn it over, and now we're just going to screw all this down. Alright, there's your handle, all done, easy peasy, no big. The screws I use here are M3x6, and then there's one little screw here that I think is a 2x12. M2x10 actually. So that goes and holds this part down. Alright, so we have our handle, let's get to the Morpher body. This is your main Morpher body, and so what we're going to be doing now is attaching these parts here. And so, first thing we need to do first is we need to make sure that these are matched up with our Morpher bodies. These are unique to each other. So there's a top, there's a bottom, there's a top, and there's a bottom. So what you want to do is sort of kind of put the pieces together and see what pieces line up where the standoff reaches the back of it. So this one won't work. This one is the bottom. So if we put this one together like so, the holes line up as they should. See? Ta-da! Set that off to the side, and then same thing here. Yep, these are bottom. So this is the top, so I'm going to put that one there, and this is the bottom. I'm going to put that one there. So while we're doing that, we want to put these parts on the front of the Morpher body. So these little standoffs are going to stick out through these slots like so, and you can sort of see them right there. This is what allows it to slide. And then the bottom, which has our notch for all of our wires and electronics. So that's where they are going. So we're going to make sure that they're in a down position. We're going to set them down, and we're going to put our levers in. Now our levers are unique as well. You don't need to print out multiple parts of anything. One part of each. The levers, the one that sits on the bottom is the one that has this sort of, here I can focus this really quick. It's the one that has a little kind of angle. This is the one that's going to sit on the bottom. The one that sits on the top sits in there as such, so these are on the same level when it comes to the spray. So we're going to put this one in here like that, and we're going to make sure that the standoffs from the Morpher backing parts are inside the slots on the levers, whatever. Okay, just like that. So you should have your hooks here, which are going to be held by the button, and then you should have your hooks on the top where the spring is going to be held facing opposite each other. Now that that's in there, we're going to go ahead and put our washers in and screw this down.
You want to make sure that these are moving as freely as possible, that there should be no type of obstructions, nothing. So make sure after you've done printing your parts, make sure that you are cleaning and removing all support materials from your print as much as humanly possible, because you want this nice smooth movement you got going on here. Okay, now you don't want to tighten these down too much because they do hinder movement, but you know, kind of play with it, tighten them down to, you want these to open freely and you want them to slide back and close freely. The translation between each part needs to be as smooth as possible in order for this to work. So yeah, right now you got a little bit of give here. I don't like that, mainly right here. So I'm going to go ahead and do a quarter turn there just to loosen it up a bit. Like this should just fall out. Like you shouldn't have any problems right now. Alright, so now that that's in there, we're now going to put on our coin housing. And I've already mounted everything in here with a glue dot for the reed switch, as well as putting the LED ring in.
Hi, it's me again. I wanted to give another recommendation regarding the coin housing here. You don't want to put the reed switch directly behind where the coin is going to be sitting to avoid constant magnetic exposure. So instead, what you want to do is take that reed switch and put it on the Morpher body off to the side, as you see right here. That will avoid the magnets being exposed to it 24/7. When it comes to putting in your coin housing and the coin, make sure that your magnet is put in on the opposite side of the reed switch. That way, when you insert your coin, you still have mountability there, and then the opposite magnet on the coin will activate the reed switch, giving you a nice precise turn on. Or you can just go ahead and insert the button to kind of avoid all of this nonsense and headache. So just thought I'd point that out.
You want to put the LED ring in first and then put in your reed switch, just so you know. Gather up all your wires and you want to sort of kind of feed them through here. Alright, so now we got our Morpher all together. The coin housing is in. You don't need to worry about tightening this down a lot, because these slots in the back are going to move freely because there is a gap between the Morpher and these backings here. Okay, so next we need to add our spring, because we need to add our backing, and these need to be held in the open position like that. So what you're going to do is you're going to take the levers in the back, bring them together, and you're going to take your spring. Now, depending on how, you know, tight you want your spring to react will determine what kind of spring you want to use. I'm using this one here, which has a little bit of stiffness to it, which is what I like. Alright, so I'm just going to go ahead and hook it here. So the spring should be in there. Test it again, push it down, let it pop up. You should get a nice, solid, sharp movement, which I'm a-okay with that. Now we're going to add our Morpher shells. So you have two holes here that are going to connect your Morpher shells. You got 1, 2, but then you also have 3 and 4 on either side. So remember which one is which. You can't get it wrong because all the screws are not going to go in, okay? So I believe this one was my top. And we're going to put that here, like so. You kind of look in there to see where all the holes line up. Don't screw it in too tight because, well, I'm using PLA. Depending on what you guys decide to use will determine torque strength. But PLA is really soft, so I'm just going to be super careful here because I don't want to reprint this again. Alright. So you want to have your screw, these holes are designed to be shallow holes, so this will be able to slide without the screw interfering with the backing here. Okay, now we got 2 more screws here, so let's get those screwdrivers. Alright, so now we're going to test our springy action again. Make sure everything looks good, feels good. I like it, looks great. Cool, I'm happy with it. Let's do our handle first so the handle can lock into the lever. So we're going to put the levers in, the spring, everything sits here like that. You want to get the spring here, and if you look, there is a hole there's a hole right here where the spring needs to fit into. There it is. That little emboss there is where the spring is going to fit into so it doesn't fly out when you're using this thing. Alright. Lock it. There you go. So you can actually test this like that. Push the button. You have yourself pop and open Morpher. And it resets every time. So now that that's out of the way, we're going to add our lever switch, limit switch.
Yeah, I don't know how many times they're going to pop up in this video, but I do want to make sure that you guys know that these levers that open up and close the Morpher, they need to move as freely as possible, because if they're too tight, that limit switch will not trigger like it's supposed to. I had this problem after I got done building my Morpher. I thought I had an issue with the placement of the limit switch. It wasn't that. The levers were not opening far enough because I had the screws in them screwed down too tight. So make sure this thing is moving as freely as possible so you can get that smacking of the lever switch when you open your Morpher.
So now when you hit the button here, I don't know if I can show you and do it at the same time, but that lever switch is going to be triggered, which is going to activate your Morpher sequence. So again, push button to reset. There you go. Okay? So all the fun stuff is in. Everything looks good. Now we're going to throw in our Morpher backing, and we're going to feed all of our cables up through this cutout here. Okay, before I do that, let me make a note. When you're doing your soldering, okay, make sure that your data wires are not all the same colors, okay? And remember which data wire you have. You're going to have a ground, a power, and the data wire for your LED rings. That right here is indicated by these three here: your red, your blue, and your black. Ground, data, power. Okay, so that way when you go and solder in your stuff, you know exactly where each one is supposed to go. My reed switch here is green and black. Data, ground. And then of course my limit switch here is yellow and black. The more important thing is the data wires, because the data wires are going to go into the pins that are on your Arduino Nano. And these pins right here are what you're going to need to remember based on what I'm about to show you in terms of soldering. So data goes to the board, okay? The grounds, what we're going to do is we're going to be combining the grounds into one ground, because we're limiting ourselves on grounds here. This only has 2 ports of ground and 1 ground is already taken. So we are going to simply go ahead and combine all the grounds into one. Alright, after you screwed in your back, this is where all the electronics go, which Arduino is going to be there, and then you have your power supply there. All of this should fit in once all of this is soldering together, and then of course you have your backing that sits on top. Okay, cool. So you should be able to rotate your handle down. You should be able to push the button, have it trigger, and then reset. Push it again. Make sure everything is working a-okay for you, okay? Now, about the levers. You want to make sure you do those levers in a nice durable PLA, because as you can see, the opening here on one side is bigger than the other. That's because the spring in there is sort of kind of pulling this up, and it doesn't know how to reset. So make sure that you are using PETG or ABS for your levers.
Hello, me again. I just want to point out that I do have an alternate lever here that you guys can use. It's slightly reinforced on the side in which the spring is pulling. Doesn't fix the problem 100%, but it does mitigate it a whole lot to where you don't even notice it. So go ahead and print this in PLA or ABS, however you want to do it. It is included in the current file package.
Or if you're using resin, make sure you're using like a super durable, tough resin, nothing that's brittle, nothing that's going to break, okay? But this works. Now all we have to do is solder up the wires and power this bad boy up and see what it does. So let's go.
Disclaimer here: if your soldering skills are not up to par or not relatively subpar, you might want to take a break and go watch some YouTube videos on how to solder these things in, because this is very important. Like I said before, I combined all my grounds because I only have one other ground that I'm working with. So I combined all my grounds into one and plugged the grounds into that last remaining ground. I went ahead and I plugged my power to my LED ring into the 5-volt slot And then all the remaining wires are just data pins that go into pin 6 for the LEDs, pin 3 for the lever switch, and pin 2 for the reed switch. Once that's all done, you're good to go. Now, some of the mistakes that I made is that I'm using too thick of a wire. I'm using a 26 gauge. What I would recommend is you use a 28 gauge wire for everything else except the power for the LEDs. The LED does need a 26 gauge wire because of the voltage going through it. So you want to have a nice thick wire that can carry that amount of voltage to the LEDs. Everything else, the ground, the data wires, can be thinner wires. Those are easier to deal with and they're less rigid to work with. You will need some heat shrink and a heat gun because it's easier to just feed all the wires through and then cut the wires, combine them together, solder them together with some heat shrink. But the more heat shrink you use, the more rigid the wires become. So please keep that in mind. That was the mistake that I made, and I'm going to end up having to do all of my wiring just to make sure all of this fits within the backing, which based on my design, it does. So make sure you're soldering very, very good. Make sure all your connections are solid connections, otherwise it's not going to work properly. And make sure that you are mitigating as much excess wire as possible, and you are using higher gauge 28 gauge wire that is thinner, more flexible, and easier to work with. Okay, cool. Now with all the soldering done, everything looks to be in order. Let's see how this thing turned out.
After 10,000 years, I'm free! It's time to conquer Earth!
Alpha, Reader's Escape. Recruit a team of teenagers with attitudes.
And that's going to do it for me for this video. Sorry my videos have been few and in between. Like I said, I've been busy working on this project, and now that it's done, I'm probably going to go have a full night's sleep because I'm definitely needing that right now. Shout out to all the patrons on the screen who wanted me to do this. You guys have what you want. I'm glad you guys are there. Stick around. There's a V2. There's going to be a V2 of this, and as well as some accessories that's going to come to where you can upgrade your Morpher however you want. You can customize it however you want. You can morph in action however you want, and every time you put in that coin, you can have different LED colors and stuff like that. Entirely up to you. I've made it completely versatile for you. So go check out my Patreon, patreon.com/Will@HeroicStudios, and of course the usual shindig. Like and subscribe, comment if you have any questions, share the video. Let me know what you guys think about this awesome morpher, because as you all know, it's morphing time, and I'm gonna go morph my ass to sleep. Alright, I'll see you guys later.